Hello everyone, and welcome back to another MSM Composer commentary video. Ever since we saw the conclusion of Ethereal Workshop back in August, I've wondered if we would be able to see these new Ethereals be added into the Composer app. Since we already have the single and double elemental Ethereals in the app, I personally would believe that we could eventually see the triples, quads, and quint in the app as well. With that being the case, I wanted to dedicate a video to predicting what each new Ethereal could add to the app, so let's hop right in. For certain monsters, I will be providing visual representations of where different sounds will go on the staff and or audible examples of certain sounds I may be referring to. This won't be for every monster because it really depends on how straightforward each monster is and how complicated I'm making it, so with that being said, enjoy. Starting off with Meebkin, I think that most of, if not its entire staff, will consist of the different pitches of the Angklung, which is the sound that is produced by the Meebs. I could also see it being split-staffed if the range is too big for the instrument. If that were to be the case, I think the rest of the staff could be used for the sound effect that Meebkin's tail makes in its tracks. As for if Meebkin would have held notes, I think it would make sense judging by its in-game tracks. For Gaddzooks, I think its sounds would be approached similarly to many other percussionists in the app currently. For Gadzooks specifically, I think its staff could consist of a kick drum, the two different snares present within its tracks, and some tom drums. I personally see the kick taking the bottom 4 notes, the toms taking the top 3 notes, and the two snares taking the rest of the notes, which follows the pattern of similar monsters such as Deej and Shelby. For Yooreek, I think it's fairly straightforward. Since Yooreek has two different forms of playing per se, I think it would be reasonable to expect Yooreek to be a split staff monster, with Yooreek taking the lower staff while Yooreek's tongue takes the upper staff. As for Yooreek's held notes, I would personally like to believe that it could hold notes, but I feel like the ability would be revoked by the monster handlers. I believe that Blarret is also quite self-explanatory. Since Blarret has just one sound and a pretty good range from what we have heard, I think Blarret could have a full staff and make the same sound throughout it. Automatons have a very good range from what I've observed by having one of my own, so that should make it easy to incorporate Blarret into the Composer app. As for Blarret having held notes, I think it is very likely judging by its second track. Similarly to Blarret, I also think that Auglur could have a full staff. Since Auglur's instrument is electronic, it practically has an infinite range and would sound really nice. If we were to get a split staff, however, I think that some of Auglur's shaky notes could be the second part of the staff. But as it stands now, I personally can't see why they wouldn't make it a full staff. As for if Auglur would receive held notes, I think it's quite possible, but it could easily be declined against. For Flasque, I think the most likely option is that it will have a split staff. As much as I wish it could have a full staff, I don't particularly think that its clanking has enough of a range to fill the entire staff. With this being said, I can hear slight differences between Flasque's two tracks in terms of the way in which its sounds are produced. In its second track, it sounds a bit more fuzzy to me, so I think that fuzzier sound could make up the second half of the staff. For Nitebear, I think it would also have a full staff since we really don't hear it say or do anything other than its yo's. Although we haven't heard a super huge range in its voice, I do think that Nitebear would be capable of having a good sounding chromatic scale. As for held notes, I feel like Nitebear won't get them since elongated notes aren't really part of its style of singing. Once again, I think Piplash would undoubtedly be capable of a full staff as well since they're just a guitar sound, which would make it really easy to fill out. Similarly to Nitebear as well, Piplash really doesn't present anything other than their main sound of a guitar, so there really wouldn't be many options other than a full scale. Going along with the Nitebear similarities, I also doubt that Piplash would get held notes due to its plucked way of playing. To me, Exert is in a similar boat to Whaill, where it has both pitched and pitchless sounds that it produces, so I think that we could take some inspiration from Composer Whaill for Exert. From what I have observed myself, Exert has 3 different types of belches, 2 different pitchless belches and the pitched belching. However, differently from Composer Whaill, I'd like to see Exert's pitch belch take up the majority of the staff, since I would deem that the more valuable sound. Even if Exert has a less than desirable sound, let's just say that. And for Exert, I don't think that it would receive held notes since the sound is just a short belch, so I would doubt it. Teeter-Tauter is an interesting one since they are vocally rhythmic, which, in this case at least, means that they use their voice to make a sound that is not one specific pitch. Since this is the case, I'm not entirely sure how they'll approach it, but since even the non-pitched percussion monsters have different pitches, I think a monster like Teeter-Tauter could get the same treatment. And just like percussionists again, Teeter-Tauter has a few different vocalizations, so the staff would be broken into 3 different segments of words: hut, ho, and woo. And as you could likely predict, I personally think that there's a low chance that Teeter-Tauter would get held notes due to its rhythmic vocalizations. I think Whaill would also be a monster with a full staff due to its huge range and choir-esque nature. Since Chorister also has a full staff, I think it would only make sense for Whaill to have one as well. This will also come to no one's surprise, but I think it's extremely likely that Whaill will receive held notes, and I really hope that this is the case because Whaill sounds are too good not to have held notes, plus it would just sound silly. For Vhenshun, they have a lot of sounds, so the biggest question is if all of them will be incorporated into its Composer variant. From what I could pick up on, I determined that there were 8 different sounds, 2 of which are debatably pitched. On my list of sounds, we can observe that Vhenshun makes sounds via foot stomps, pickaxe clanks, gear ticks, steam, whistles and whistle squeaks, claw pinches, and sawing. In my opinion, if any noises needed to be scrapped for the Composer app, I would most likely choose the whistle squeaks for being vaguely similar to the steam sound effect. I would also consider removing either the foot stomps or claw pinches due to the similarities in their sounds. With that being said, I previously brought up that you can hear pitches in some of the sounds, those being the pickaxe clanks and the whistle. This is important because both would preferably have a variety of notes so that they don't clash with the rest of the song that they may be playing in. However, in the end, I decided to give the whistle a full octave, the pickaxe clank 3 notes, and the claw pinch, steam, gear tick, and saw all only got 1 note. For Pentumbra, I believe that we could expect a full staff, especially since we already see Pentumbra capable of doing an octave jump. However, I do hear a low, raspy voice layered in as well, so that might be something that convinces the monster handlers to do a split staff, but I'm hoping that doesn't turn out to be the case. As for Pentumbra's held notes, I am fairly confident that they'll get held notes, especially judging by their 3rd track. Rhysmuth is in a similar boat to Vhenshun where both have a variety of sounds that they produce, but Rhysmuth was a bit easier to tackle. Right off the bat, I feel like some of the synthy chords in some of Rhysmuth's tracks would not be included since Rhysmuth is a percussionist rather than an instrumentalist. But for all we know, Rhysmuth could get the rare D's treatment, but that also could be something for when rare Ethereals eventually get added. Anyways, the sounds that I determined could be expected are a kick, snare, hi-hat, and what I'm calling a gritty tom. These are the main sounds that I was able to pick up on, but let me know if you think I missed any because I'm not super confident that I heard every single instrument. Oogiddy is once again another complex percussionist with a variety of sounds, and I just gotta say that I absolutely adore Ethereal Workshop for that. Anywho, with that being the case, I picked out what I deemed as the most prominent parts of Oogiddy's tracks, which I think and hope will make it in. Those would be the various sludge sound effects, a crash cymbal, a ride cymbal and bell, an open and closed hi-hat, and a tambourine. Once deciding on this, I decided to give each of the 5 sounds 3 notes on the staff since it evenly came out to such. Now it's time for the big gun, that being BeMeebEth, the ethereal quint. I think that there are a few options for BeMeebEth, so I'll talk through them. I think what makes this difficult is the fact that BeMeebEth speaks actual English, so it makes it hard to say that there's one definitive thing for them to use as their composer vocals. Personally, I think the best case scenario is that BeMeebEth receives a full staff built upon the general sound of the talk box, which is specifically present in their third track. However, they also make plenty of other vocalizations that aren't exactly English, such as do's, ahs, and even yeahs. With this being the case, I think that it's also a possibility that the monster handlers give BeMeebEth a split staff with 2 of those vocalizations, but I'm personally hoping that it's just a full staff at the end of the day. And as for if BeMeebEth will get held notes, I do think it's quite likely, just generally judging by the vibe that BeMeebEth has with its tracks. And that's about it for all my little prediction thingamadoodads. As always, let me know what you think, because there's definitely some things that I may have missed, and different viewpoints can help a lot. I know this type of MSM Composer prediction video is slightly different than my typical one, but I thought it would be an interesting topic to cover since we already have some Ethereals in the app, but not these new ones. If you all enjoyed this video, I might embark upon a video discussing the auxiliary seasonals coming to Composer, so let me know if I should. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.